Добрий день, я вітаю всіх, хто приєднався до нас. Чекаємо підключення.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olha Atamanova, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Ukraine Media Center today. Now we will be discussing the fuel market. We'll discuss the challenges arising in the fuel market. And joining us in our studio is Serhii Kuiun, fuel market expert. Good afternoon, Mr. Serhii. Good afternoon. So let's start our conversation with the overall situation in oil and gas market. And first of all, can you answer our spectators the question which is of everyone's concern? Will there be a price hike? Well, now we observe certain turbulence, and in fact the situation is changing quite dynamically. There was a good outlook in December, and the prices fell down to $60 per barrel, which is the lowest notch per year. Last year we've seen the price amounting to $85 sometimes, so generally there was a fall of prices, and the prices of procurement have grown significantly, which allowed us to pass the hike of the excise growth unnoticed. For example, it was 1.75 hryvnia per liter for gas and 1.25 hryvnia per diesel, and in the gas stations it was totally unnoticed. Specifically when it comes to light oil products, the procurement price has fallen, the excise tax has grown, and both factors set each other off. And now the year has started less favorably for us. The exchange rate is growing. Dollar and euro have grown at least 1 hryvnia in price, and it's important for the fuel market because all of the oil products are being imported. We need hard currency to procure the petroleum products abroad, and the higher the exchange rate, the higher the price. Talking about the proportion, let me remind you, about 1 hryvnia in the exchange rate amounts to about 1 hryvnia of the cost of the petroleum, or say 90 kopecks. But it's still an important factor. And secondly, the global prices have turned from $60 in December. Now the price has grown back to 65, which increased the procurement cost, and we see that the wholesale prices are growing. The gas has grown to hryvnia in wholesale, and the diesel is catching up. So there is plus 1 hryvnia accounting for exchange rate. Then the global prices added another hryvnia. Now the market is holding on, but if there will be no changes, there will be certain correction of prices, certain price hike in January. Currently, we see the price of the Arctic Brent growing. When it comes to diesel fuel, in fact, this fuel is being manufactured in not so large amounts because the technological processes don't always allow to do so, and usually we don't import a lot of it. This year we see that it's a real winter that has come, and the demand is real high, and we can see the chains increasing the prices to reduce the demand, but still the amount of sales is pretty big, and it results to be the most expensive fuel brand. Talking about the situation in the fuel market of Ukraine from the perspective of the demand that has grown, because many consumers use the fuel not only for their vehicles but also for their businesses and for heating. So to what extent has it influenced this structure of consumption, and to what extent are we going to cope with it in terms of satisfying the demand? Well, obviously we see and we hear that there are a lot of generators working around us, the power shutdowns are long, and there is a lot of consumption, but I cannot say that it critically added to the consumption structure. Probably about 10% is what accounts for generator demand. Well, in fact, if we add gas and diesel together, it would amount 70 to 80,000 tons per month, which is a decent amount. But talking about the impact of this phenomena on the prices, basically we can bring way more fuel, we can deliver more, and there is no deficit, and deficit is the fundamental factor that is pushing the prices up. So there is no significant impact on the prices. But at the same time, recently we've seen lines in the gas stations. If we don't expect any collapse, so what are those lines related to? Remember, a few years ago there was a restriction for even for purchase of fuel, and there was real deficit back then. Well, recently we sent a person, one of our people, to Irpin, to Busha, to see what's going on there, but there was really nothing interesting there, like 1 or 2 vehicles at the gas stations. There is no rush, everything seems calm in the city. But why such situations may arise? Probably there was really specifically, now that we're talking about the facilities that are located in the outskirts, in the beltways, like every other driver brings a canister. So you fuel your car, you fuel the canister, then you pay. Now everybody buys tea or coffee to heat themselves. So you just physically spend more time at the gas station, and its capacity is thus reducing. Respectively, it may result in some lines, but to say that it's a widespread phenomena and we have some serious rush at the gas stations, no, that's not the case. So there is enough fuel, we have sufficient reserves in the first half of the year, we shouldn't face any problems. Well, currently the fuel market looks very stable. Well, definitely it faces certain challenges. We can see that the enemy's attacks, the enemy's strikes are inflicted on this infrastructure as well, but currently we are able to solve those problems because this is the decentralized market. There are no nodes, like for example in energy sector there are thermal power plants, there are like power transportation substations, so this system is decentralized and it's difficult to stop. Well, definitely there is war, we keep seeing more surprises, more new challenges, but so far we're coping with them and I have good hopes now that this generator demand is still growing, but we can see way less vehicles in the streets because the situation in the roads is difficult in terms of safety. So in some parts there is some growth, in others there is reduction, so the situation is more or less balanced and stable. Well, you've mentioned that Arctic brands of fuel, are they mostly bought for the generators, or how come this demand for this brand of fuel? And another question, will the operators try to bring it in sufficient amounts, or it doesn't make sense and everyone will wait for the frosty weather to wane a little bit? Well, really the first days of the cold weather every year is a challenge. Every year there's a lot of pictures online of the frosted filters covered in paraffin that don't allow the vehicles to work. There are curses flowing addressed to different chains, but this year it's not the case. Last days I am in communication with the chains and there are very rare cases of claims. There are some addresses when there was a full tank of summer diesel and then a person added 5 more liters of Arctic fuel and then they complained because it's still freezing. Well, basically the standard winter brand that can hold on with the temperature of below minus 20 below zero, but this Arctic brand is something for, it's a pill to keep you calm, to make you more confident that you can start a vehicle in the morning. And again, minus 17, minus 15, during nighttime it may fall below minus 20, and standard winter brands may start freezing. This Arctic brand is minus 32. There are some brands that are standardized for minus 42. Those are the brands delivered by Polish Orlen concern. They supply fuel for our armed forces, so we can keep calm about the quality of that product that is being supplied to our military. So those brands are not being manufactured in large amounts because the intrinsic value is high and they can be used during the peak winter times. Well, talking about the standard diesel, what are the temperatures that it may operate in? According to the standards, it should work at minus 20. Well, it should, but different things happen because, again, what are the risks that I observe? The half of the amounts of the imported diesel fuel comes from the countries of the southern countries, such as Turkey, Greece, Saudi Arabia, they don't produce winter brands because the weather conditions in their countries don't require them to do so. For us, they make it. They add special admixtures that prevent the paraffin that starts crystallizing at low temperatures. They don't allow this paraffin to do so. So it's not so reliable method, because that fuel on the way to us, there is a lot of reloading, and the concentration of this brand may be reducing. And I've seen that those who have residues of that Greek diesel fuel, they document that there are claims. However, the operators try to reinsure themselves. They buy that admixture and they add it just to be on the safe side. And it's pretty expensive, by the way. It adds more cost, but to be on the safe side, the companies do it. So far, all of the brands work, even the standard winter one. Mr. Serhii, another routine thing that has emerged is the liquefied gas in the bottles that people use to fuel their equipment. That's the thing that helps us to survive in the conditions of the mass strikes of the Russians, but at the same time it poses certain threat. I wanted to ask you about that and to hear from you some advice for the population, for those who use that method to heat themselves up, to cook their meals. So what can you advise to that people? It's a very timely question, a pressing one. I was traveling around the city a lot, and I've seen there are lines for liquefied gas. Why lines again? Because one thing is when you fuel your car, and another thing is when you fuel your car and you fuel your bottle as well. And I've seen that there were lines. I paid attention to it, and I wanted to remind the citizen that it's a normal solution for the situation that is being used all around the world. The only problem is that those things are not well regulated in Ukraine. What I'm talking about, that fueling the bottles in the gas stations is prohibited. You cannot fuel your bottle in the majority of the chains. The personnel will reject to do it. Is it a regulation, or is there anything behind it? Well, it's prohibited by all of the rules of the petroleum retail trade. But why does it happen? Because, first of all, the government hasn't fulfilled their job. Businesses underperformed as well. But how does it happen in Europe? You come to a station and there are already filled bottles, and you just bring your one and you swap them. And this is the way it happens everywhere. Spain, Turkey. So the countries that traditionally live without heating, yes, they mostly buy it to cook meals. They buy those gas bottles. There are regions where there is no centralized gas supply. But why do they pose a threat? Basically, there are mechanisms, but they are not well outlined. So for your understanding, so you understand the scale of the problem, you can legally fill a bottle in Kyiv region in one single place, and it's not a gas station. It's an institution, a licensed facility that has all of the relevant certifications, and basically no one is going to go 100 kilometers, not even 50 or 20, to fill their gas bottle. So sometimes the gas stations, specifically when it comes to economy segment, chains. But on the other hand, people don't have other way to cope with the situation. What is the threat? Is you buy a gas in the bottle, and in cold weather it's condensed. If you fill the full bottle and you bring it to a warm place, the gas will start heating up and expand, which may result in explosion. Remember, we hear those news that a small booth has exploded, with a dinner booth has exploded, so that's exactly that story. Every bottle should be filled at 85% of capacity max. It's good when it's new and empty. It's clear there's nothing inside it, but usually after the bottle is used, there is some residue left, and it may be different. And you have to take it into account as well. There are specified algorithms. You have to know the weight of the empty bottle, then you have to weigh it again to calculate the weight of the residue, and respectively calculate how much do you have to fill up to 85%. And you come to the gas station and you tell them to do so. For example, if your bottle has a 50-liter capacity, you can fill it up to 42 liters, for example. And if there were 10 liters of residue, it means that you should fill 35 more. So this is the biggest threat. Please look for the instructional videos in YouTube. For example, there is an instruction in our channel. There are specialized charts, graphs that show you how to calculate necessary amount of gas to be filled in your bottle. So please take it into account. But otherwise, that's a normal thing. So from the perspective of filling the bottle in the gas stations, there are no such risks that need to be minimized. So basically, if there is normal regulation for that, such a way would be normal and could be used. Absolutely. A whole different thing that the bottles are not usually filled at the gas stations. Usually they are being filled at the dedicated liquefied gas storage station. So it's a certified product that they produce. They give you a bottle full of gas, and in our case, some people bring it from their grandmother's homes, and no one knows how long ago that bottle might have been maintained for the last time. We have this old system of regional gas facilities that we inherited from the Soviet Union, and we failed to build a new system. Well, thank you very much for this information. Hopefully it will come handy for some of our spectators and will keep them safe against any negative consequences that may result from failure to adhere to the rules that Mr. Serhii has mentioned. Thank you, Mr. Serhii. Thank you for joining our broadcast and sharing important information for our listeners and spectators. And I would like to thank our security and defense forces, thanks to whom we can still meet here and discuss important things. Thanks, everybody. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.